Selective mutism, also known as SM, is the term given to children who are constantly unable to speak in certain areas. The NHS states that SM affects 1 in 140 young children, being more common in girls and children who are learning a second language. I found out that there's a massive lack of awareness among medical practitioners, as parents of children with SM often report that their child was misdiagnosed by being told that their child is timid and will grow out of this behaviour. From finding out this information, I wondered if there was a way to help children with SM communicate through music. Researching more into music therapy, I found out that by working with music, it helps to create a language which reflects emotion and physical connections, which helps to enable children with SM to build up connections with themselves and others. One of the main aims and outcomes of using music therapy for children with SM is to increase communication through the use of music and emotions. The Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders states that having structural activities to support children with SM actually increases their confidence in using his or her voices. Most children with SM are noted for their love of expression like art and music, and in addition to this, they experience anxiousness, worry, nervousness, or things that they can't control. I critically kept these research points in mind while creating my project. Using all these points, I found out that by playing games actually helps with anxiety, and also something a child can take control of. For my project, I'll be collaborating with a second-year games design student, Luke Saul, to produce a finished platformer game with using music to try help a certain number of children with SM communicate through singing and humming. Firstly, I came up with a target audience for the game, which is children who suffer with selective mutism who are aged 5 to 7. I decided on this age because it's the age where selective mutism is prime in children. The next step in my process was trying to figure out how I would include emotions in the game for the children to associate with. My initial idea in the project proposal was to have multiple characters for the child to choose from. He or she will then go through level 1 of a simple platformer game as that character. Then when the level is completed, the character's face will appear on the screen 3 times with different emotions on each character. Each facial expression is labelled with a number, and the child would press one of the numbers on the keypad to show his or her reaction at that time. By doing this, hopefully the child playing can associate with the characters and use it as a way of communicating to others. However, I researched and found out that children with SM actually play games to control their anxiety. I realised that there was not a lot of activity or not a lot of gameplay in this game, so therefore I decided to add more movement into the game. I changed the characters to small round balls so that the game-making process was easier. Since I'm not using cartoon characters anymore with facial expressions on them, I had to figure out a new way of distinguishing each ball, so I used colours and facial expressions to do that. This is how I made the emotional balls for the game. In the game software, I got the ball template and drew faces on them and changed the colours depending on the emotion of the ball. My initial idea for the child to communicate his feelings was to press one of the numbers on the keypad which was linked to an expression of a character. Like I said before, this is not that interactive, and as a result of this, the child playing the game might get bored. I improved this idea of mine, and instead of pressing numbers on the keypad, the round ball character would go through paint buckets to change their colour and emotion. The next step of my making process was implicating music into the game. This was quite challenging since I changed my method of doing it. So firstly, I was going to make small motifs which represented the movements and emotions of the character. When the child played the game once or twice using the keypad to move or change the character's emotion, I then was going to replace the keypad with small musical motifs, so that the child playing could sing or hum the motif, resembling the emotion of how they're feeling at the time. However, I felt making motifs for the movement and emotions of the character was a lot of notes for the child to remember. So my new idea of implicating music into the game was when the small round ball went through the paint bucket and became a new colour and emotion, the ball would have to go on a block to paint it. After the ball paints the block with the colour on it, that's when the motif plays. I decided to do this as it adds more gameplay to the game, since the child playing has to find the blocks to paint. So I made 3 motifs, one for each emotional ball: angry, sad, and happy. I didn't want my motifs to be too long so that the children couldn't remember it, as that kind of defeats the purpose of the game. So I thought 3 to 6 notes was an acceptable length. I also realised that the motif should be a little bit easier since the children are supposed to sing or hum it. So by using challenging motifs, it might confuse the children, which will result in them not wanting to sing. So while composing the motifs, I wanted to resemble their emotions as clearly as I could, through music, as the child is going to use these motifs as a language to communicate. Since I decided to have 3 motifs, sad, happy, and angry, I used musical techniques to represent their emotions to my best ability. For example, for the happy motif, I used an ascending arpeggio. This is one of the examples of one of the motifs that I recorded myself and placed on Logic. I then prepared the file for bouncing and switched it into an MP3 file so that can be used for the game. Since I'm using a combination of music and games in my project, I researched the importance of music and games. I found out that music is a tool that controls emotions and can establish the atmosphere of the story being told. Music adds a fun touch to the game and players feel fully involved in the game as their senses are involved. The combination of music and games has a positive outcome, especially in my game, since the child playing the game will be involved in the music side of it by singing or humming the motifs. Overall, I feel very confident and proud of my project. Although the process of trying to get children with selective mutism to communicate might be long, I'm confident that the children can link their emotions on the screen to practicing them in everyday life by singing or humming the motifs, which resemble the emotion that they're feeling at the time. I believe that everyone has a voice to be heard, and children with SM should not be suffering alone, with the final aim of potentially helping children to find their voice and ability to communicate. Here's a small run-through of the game. I have a main menu page with instructions on how to play. The first level is played with a white ball resembling a neutral feeling. The second level I introduce the sad ball. After he paints all of the boxes, then the motif will play. Here is the second level of the game. The neutral ball is going up to the red bucket, and now he's going to paint the red box and the motif will play. The third level now has all 3 emotions in the level. As you can see, the blue ball can only paint the blue blocks, not any other colours. In this level I added 2 new things, one being the colour neutralizer, so when the red ball, for example, goes through it, he'll turn back to being neutral white. The second thing I added are these teleporters. In the final level, I added these monsters. This will teach the children to not get too overstimulated and control their emotions. Thank you for listening to my interdisciplinary project.